The village of Eldermore was small and isolated, nestled on the edge of a vast, ancient forest, known simply as the Silent Forest. For generations, the villagers had avoided the woods, speaking of it only in hushed tones. No birds sang there, no animals ventured in, and an eerie stillness hung in the air like a shroud. Legends told of shadows that moved without light, of whispers carried on the wind that no one could understand, and of people who entered the forest, never to return. When a group of hikers disappears while exploring the Silent Forest, the village is thrown into panic. Mara, a local ranger with a fierce determination and a troubled past, volunteers to lead the search. But as she ventures deeper into the forest's heart, she discovers that the silence is not empty. It is alive, watching, and hungry. Mara tightened the straps on her backpack as she stood at the edge of the Silent Forest. The sun was dipping low, casting long shadows that stretched like fingers across the ground. The villagers had gathered behind her, their faces pale and anxious. "We don't know what's out there," Old Tom, the village elder, warned. "The forest doesn't like visitors." Mara nodded, her jaw set. "I've been in these woods before. I'll find them." The hikers had been missing for 3 days, a young couple and their friends, all experienced outdoors people. Their disappearance was unlike anything Eldermore had seen in decades. As Mara stepped beneath the canopy, the air grew thick and still. The usual sounds of the forest, birdsong, rustling leaves, distant animal calls, were gone. The silence was absolute. Her flashlight cut a narrow path through the gathering gloom, but the deeper she went, the more the shadows seemed to shift and move just beyond the light's reach. A sudden chill ran down her spine. She wasn't alone. Mara moved cautiously through the Silent Forest, every step muffled by the thick carpet of moss and fallen leaves. The air was unnervingly still, as if the forest itself was holding its breath. Her flashlight beam cut through the gloom, but shadows clung to the edges, shifting and twisting in ways that made her skin crawl. She paused, listening. No birdsong, no rustling of small animals, just silence. A silence so complete it pressed against her ears like a physical weight. Her thoughts drifted to the missing hikers. 3 days lost in these woods, and no sign of them. It didn't make sense. They were experienced, prepared. Something else had taken them. A faint sound caught her attention, a whisper, barely audible, carried on the wind. She spun around, shining her light into the darkness, but saw nothing. "Hello?" she called softly. "Is someone there?" Only silence answered. Mara pressed on, her heart pounding. The deeper she went, the more the shadows seemed to move, not with the wind, but with purpose. Shapes flickered just beyond her vision, vanishing when she turned to look. Suddenly, the ground beneath her shifted. She stumbled, catching herself on a gnarled root. Looking down, she saw strange markings etched into the bark. Symbols she didn't recognize, glowing faintly with an otherworldly light. Her breath caught. These were no ordinary carvings. As she studied the symbols, a cold breeze swept through the trees, carrying a low, mournful wail that seemed to come from everywhere and nowhere. Mara's flashlight flickered, and for a moment, the forest was plunged into darkness. When the light returned, she saw them. Shadowy figures emerging from the trees, their forms shifting and indistinct, eyes glowing faintly in the dark. "Who's there?" Mara demanded, gripping her flashlight like a weapon. The figures didn't answer. Instead, they moved closer, their presence overwhelming and suffocating. Mara backed away slowly, heart racing. She needed to find the hikers, and fast. But the forest had other plans. Mara's breath came in sharp gasps as the shadowy figures closed in, their forms flickering like smoke caught in a breeze. She swung her flashlight wildly, the beam slicing through the darkness, but never quite reaching them. The forest around her seemed to pulse with a life of its own, the silence broken only by the soft rustle of leaves and the distant, haunting wail. She stumbled backward, her foot catching on a root, sending her sprawling to the mossy ground. Pain shot through her ankle, but adrenaline pushed her to her feet. The shadows hesitated, as if sensing her vulnerability, then melted back into the trees. Mara didn't wait to see if they would return. She scrambled to her feet and pressed onward, deeper into the forest's heart. The strange symbols she had seen earlier reappeared on tree trunks and stones, glowing faintly, guiding her path, or perhaps warning her away. Hours passed, or maybe only minutes. Time seemed to lose meaning in the silent forest. The canopy above thickened, blotting out the moon and stars, plunging her into near total darkness. Her flashlight flickered again, and she cursed under her breath, fumbling for spare batteries. Suddenly, a faint light appeared ahead, a flickering glow, like a lantern swaying in the wind. Hope surged through her chest. She hurried toward it, calling out, "Hello, is someone there?" The light bobbed closer, revealing a small clearing. In the center stood a campfire, its flames low but steady. Around it sat 3 figures, 2 men and a woman, huddled close, their faces pale and drawn. "Mara," one of the men said weakly, standing up. "We thought you'd never come." Relief flooded her. "I'm here. Are you all okay?" The woman shook her head. "We've been trapped here for days. The forest. It won't let us leave." Mara nodded grimly. "I know. I've seen the shadows. They're watching us." The group shared their stories. How the forest's silence had swallowed their voices. How the shadows had stalked them, whispering in a language they couldn't understand. They spoke of strange dreams, of being pulled toward the deeper woods by unseen hands. Mara's mind raced. The forest was alive, yes, but it was also a prison. Something ancient and malevolent held sway here, feeding on fear and silence. "We need to get out," she said firmly, "before it's too late." But as they prepared to leave, the shadows returned, this time surrounding the clearing, their glowing eyes fixed on the group. Mara gripped her flashlight tighter. The forest was closing in. The shadows pressed closer, their forms swirling like smoke, eyes glowing with an eerie, unnatural light. Mara stood protectively in front of the group, shining her flashlight into the darkness, but the beam seemed to falter against the encroaching gloom. "We have to move," Mara urged, her voice steady despite the fear tightening in her chest. "Follow me, quickly." The hikers scrambled to their feet, clutching their belongings as Mara led them away from the campfire and deeper into the forest. The trees grew taller and closer together, their twisted branches forming a canopy that blocked out the moonlight. The silence was suffocating, broken only by the crunch of leaves beneath their feet and the occasional whisper of the shadows behind them. Suddenly, Mara stopped. Ahead was a clearing unlike any she had seen before. The air here was thick with an ancient energy, and the ground was covered in strange symbols carved into the earth and stones, glowing faintly with a pale blue light. "This must be the heart of the forest," Mara whispered, "the source of the silence, And the shadows. The hikers gathered around, their faces pale but determined. One of the men, David, pointed to a large stone altar in the center of the clearing, covered in moss and vines. "There's something here," he said. "Something powerful." Mara approached the altar cautiously. As she brushed away the moss, she uncovered a series of carvings, depictions of shadowy figures, twisted trees, and a figure bound by roots. A sudden chill swept through the clearing, and the shadows reappeared, swirling around the group like a living fog. Mara raised her voice. "We don't belong here. Let us leave." The shadows pulsed in response, and a voice echoed in her mind, soft, ancient, and filled with sorrow. "The forest is alive. It protects itself. It feeds on silence and fear. To leave, you must face the darkness within." Mara's heart pounded. The forest was not just a place. It was a being, a guardian of secrets and shadows. "We have to confront it," she said. Together. The group formed a circle around the altar, holding hands. Mara closed her eyes and focused on the warmth of their connection, fighting the cold that seeped into her bones. The shadows writhed and twisted, but the light of their unity pushed back the darkness. Slowly, the oppressive silence began to lift, replaced by the faint sound of wind and distant birdsong. The forest was beginning to breathe again. The clearing seemed to pulse with a new energy as the shadows recoiled, their forms dissolving into the night air like mist under the morning sun. Mara opened her eyes, feeling the weight of the forest's ancient presence still lingering, but no longer oppressive. "We did it," she whispered, her voice barely audible. The others nodded, relief washing over their faces. But Mara knew the forest's silence was not broken forever. It was a fragile peace, one that required respect and vigilance. David, the man who had first spotted the altar, stepped forward. What was that voice? What did it mean by "face the darkness within"? Mara thought for a moment. I think the forest was testing us, forcing us to confront our fears, our silence. It feeds on those things. But when we stood together, we brought light and connection. That's what it needed. The group began to make their way back toward the edge of the forest, the sounds of life slowly returning, the chirping of crickets, the rustle of small animals, the distant call of an owl. As they walked, Mara felt a strange calm settle over her. The forest was still watching, still alive, but it was no longer a place of terror. When they finally emerged from the trees, the first light of dawn was breaking over Eldermoor. The village was quiet but welcoming, the people waiting anxiously for news. Mara turned to the hikers. "You're safe now. The forest has released you." The villagers gathered around, their faces a mix of awe and gratitude. Old Tom stepped forward, nodding solemnly. "The silent forest has spoken. It's time we listen." Mara smiled faintly. "And remember, silence can be broken, but only if we face the shadows within ourselves."